listening to Unfiltered with Muhammad Uncut, a podcast about personal growth and authentic leadership. If you're looking for tips on how to manage others, get ahead, and make your way up the corporate ladder, this is not the show for you. This podcast is about being of service to others, leading from the heart, and evolving into a better version of yourself. Each episode brings you motivated stories about unfiltered leadership and authentic leaders, those who involve others, use their influence to amplify diverse perspectives, and inspire teams to achieve collective results. If this sounds like you, keep listening. Welcome to the Unfiltered Podcast, and welcome to Darren Carrington, my guest for this afternoon. Thank you so much for being my unfiltered guest. Welcome.
Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you for the invitation. It's really lovely to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I know it's the end of the day for me and kind of the start of the day for you, 12 a.m. Dubai time. So really appreciate that you've taken the time to be available for me and for the listeners who are going to be tuning in and learning all about you, what you do, and how you're making an incredible difference in the people that use your services. So I'm just going to back up a bit and give people a bit of background who Darren Carrington is. You are a versatile facilitator, you're an executive coach, you're a mentor, and you've got over 25 years experience, international broadcasting experience. Really want to get into that in a bit. So radio and TV, and successfully leading culturally diverse teams really speaks to what I'm all about as well. And you inspire and motivate people by focusing on clients' objectives to create moments of transformational change. I'm quoting you through all of the work that you do and your passions. So thank you very much. And this is kind of where I want to start right now. You're a leader who believes in transformational change. Tell me what transformational leadership looks like, Darren.
If you think about transformation as a word, what does that mean? It means moving from one place to another. And quite often, we are so caught up in the momentum, the pace of day-to-day pressures in the workplace, and people don't have the time necessarily to devote to developing other people, to get them from here to there. It's just, I've got this person doing this particular job, this is their job title, this is their role, whatever comes up, I'm expecting them to be able to deal with that. And in reality, that is not the case. There are things that will be presented to us day to day that we have no prior experience of doing. They just come as curveballs, and we are expected to be able to deal with that and move on at a rapid pace. And quite often there's a fear factor of, if I get this wrong, how is that going to reflect on me? How is that going to impact my growth and my career progression? So getting to the point of spending some time with individuals who recognize that actually they've got some blind spots around a specific task or specific tasks, plural, and giving them the opportunity to learn how to get the confidence to be able to deal with that, tackle it, and then move effectively to the next step. And over a period of different examples, you get to a point where you can look back and you can say, wow, look where I am now compared to where I was. I didn't know where I was, and look at me now. I'm buzzing because I've transformed. I didn't know I could have the ability and the skill set to do this, whatever this might be. And that's going to vary from one person to another.
And so you help people to understand themselves better.
Yeah.
As a coach, as someone who looks into people's hearts and into people's minds, and I say that because, with the emotional intelligence that you're working with and understanding people's needs, you're not telling them anything that they don't know, but you're likely helping them uncover latent awareness of themselves. How do you do that?
I just want to backtrack a bit, Mohammed. When I was a kid, I was not the brightest kid in the class, I have to tell you. And that came through missing out on a lot of my education through illness when I was very, very young. And my dad always used to say to me, if you're not sure about something, put your hand up, ask the teacher. And I was quite a shy child, and I would never really be that one to be forthcoming and ask a question, in fear of ridicule from the other kids in the class. As I've got older, that courage, I guess, has sort of risen to the surface, and I love seeking clarity. I love trying to understand, and something that, how I see it, I know is going to be very different to another person. So what I do is try to sort of pass that on to the clients that I work with by getting them to be curious and seeking to understand. And quoting Stephen Covey from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, seek first to understand, then be understood. And by asking some of those sort of self-reflective questions, they can have some of these aha moments. And people would never have the time to ask them to think about certain things in a certain way. So I try to prevent them missing out on an opportunity of having that self-realization. And quite often the way I propose contracts is that I go into the workplace and I shadow the individual. So I don't just go in for a 2-hour coaching session. I go in and I spend the whole day with you. So I'm going to see warts and all. So when you are having a communication with one of your team members, I'm observing that. And then after that's finished, I'm going to sit down and say, okay, Mohammed, how did that go? Did that turn out the way you were expecting it? Well, not exactly. Well, why do you think that might be? So I'm giving them reflections on reality, and not just something that maybe has been sort of drawn out of a textbook or some sort of coaching program. It's real life, and they can reflect on true actions that they've taken and the responses that other person that they've seen going positively or not the way they wanted it to.
That's a very impactful approach, and I'm sure one that not a lot of coaches have undertaken, to shadow or kind of be that, fly on the wall or that third person in the room. Tell me, how does that, being that third or fourth or fifth person in the room, how does that impact the situation for you or for the client or for the people that are working with them? How do you, in your words, how do you arrive at the clarity and help them get at the clarity when you're potentially observed as somebody who maybe doesn't belong there?
It sort of comes through the pre-qualifying process that we go through before we engage into a contract. And I'll say, so what are you looking to achieve by this? And, for somebody to sort of put themselves out there and seek to get some sort of coaching, support or mentoring support, that's a huge step. So a lot of people don't necessarily recognize that they need support in that particular area. So when we get to that part of the conversation and I say, so what is it you're looking to achieve here? Why do you feel that you need some coaching? What experiences have you got that has created this realization within you? So whatever they come back with, I don't necessarily make, vivid notes. I make mental notes. And throughout the conversation, I will pull some of those responses back to the conversation, and I will tie them in quite nicely. So I get them to a point of understanding why they chose to explore working with a coach in the first place, and then looking for the best options. Okay, so how do you feel your team would respond if they knew that you were being coached? Well, some might take that, I don't know. I think they might look at that as a weakness, so they want to do it more on a one-to-one and not going into the workplace. But when I sort of explain how that transparency can open up and show the power of vulnerability, and in leadership, that's a huge trait to actually display. We don't have all of the answers. We may have, academic support. We may have all of the qualifications to get us here, but we don't have all of the answers. Things are coming at us, left, right, and center from day 1 to day 2. And look at this year. Look, how many people have been prepared for COVID-19? And how many leaders have been able to sort of show themselves up front and be completely vulnerable and say, guys, I don't have the answer to this. So many, but so many are not feeling the ability to stand up and be vulnerable. So by sort of putting a very positive spin on that element of vulnerability and how strong that comes across to other members of your team, they sort of buy into that and think, well, okay, well, if I'm showing myself to be, developing in certain areas and closing some of these blind spots, how is that going to be reflecting on them, and how is that going to be inspiring them to want some of the same, to look at themselves and how they might be able to recognize some of the blind spots within themselves, and then progress to having a conversation that might open up to how another person might see the blind spots compared to their perception.
It really is a domino effect, isn't it? What we're doing can help others do things better, but if we're not doing it as well ourselves, guess what? That domino effect is causing everyone to fall around us to just fall down, right? Yeah. Our goal as leaders is really to help people rise, is to help people, maintain that ability to stand firm and whether any sort of change that's coming, whether it's the unknown, the uncertainties that we've been dealt this year. 2020 has really been a year of unknowns, or the little things that come at us every day. Because I think, 2020 certainly showed us, from forest fires in Australia at the start of the year to COVID and to forest fires now in California and elsewhere, to the little things. Sometimes it's not the big tempestuous changes in the world that are causing us angst, but they're the little things daily that we don't recognize. Sometimes these blind spots, as you call them. COVID is certainly not a blind spot for anyone, right? But daily, hourly, we are probably dealing with distractions or impulse behavior, things that are causing us to overlook, as you call them, these blind spots. And then we're not behaving at our optimal. We're not working best with others, right? And, I think Stephen Covey, his senior and junior, I guess their ears would be ringing. I guess rest in peace to the senior. But it's something, I've been on 3 different calls today, and 3 different times we've talked about Stephen Covey and the 7 habits. And I think that's imperative that people understand that whether you're reading a good book, whether you're dealing with an exceptional coach as yourself, the process is to uncover and to start within yourself. That stage of dependency is to start to look and gain that level of self-awareness to say, what am I doing well? What should I continue doing well? What do I need to start doing? What are behaviors that I'm not adopting that I need to adopt? And what are behaviors that I need to stop completely? And so you don't have that clarity, so I think this isn't to tell everyone that they need to run out and get a coach, but if they do, they should. And I'm sure you're there for them. But
absolutely.
We are a mirror. An executive coach will really be that mirror for the other person. I don't think, I do this in my coaching. I'm sure you do it in your coaching. We're not there to tell people what our area of expertise is. We're there to listen.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And, I just started a book, speaking of great authors. So Michael Bungay-Stanier, Canadian, wrote The Coaching Habit. Recently, I think earlier this year, came out with The Advice Trap, and I just picked it up and I've been reading it. And it's, where is it here? So for any one of the listeners, so great book. Make sure, and the reason this meant something to me, one of the persons I was having the pleasure of interviewing said, Mohammed, you need to read this book. But then I knew I needed to read this book because it's so easy for all of us to give advice, right?
Yeah.
Right? And we need to sit back and think, wait a minute. Being, God, whatever you call the greater force, bigger than you and I, gave us 2 of these.
That's right.
These.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I usually tell people, hey, a great coach will be your guide on the side and not the sage on the stage. I'm hearing from you. Tell me how you have been that great guide on the side for the people that you work with.
I don't pull any punches. When we go through this conversation on this sort of precursor to engaging in a working relationship, I will say, look, if you want somebody to pat you on the back and tell you that you're doing great when you know you're not, and the results are not coming through in the way that they should be, I'm not your man. I'll be very, very open and transparent with you, and I will tell you when you need to be kicking and when you need to be putting on the brakes. I will not give you the answers. I'm not here to do the work for you. I'm here to understand what it is you want to achieve. Where would you like to go? Consider me almost like a GPS. You put it in Google Maps and you know where you want to go, and I'm going to get you there without any traffic congestion, and I'm going to get you there the smoothest way possible. However, you have to do some of the work. In fact, you have to do all of the work. I'm just there.
Heavy lifting.
I'm just going to be there to sort of make sure that we are creating good action steps that we are agreed upon, that we can take forward, and they are moving towards your goals and your milestones that will get you to that destination. I will be your biggest supporter, but I would also be your biggest beater if you're not holding up your end of the bargain. You know, I don't want you to waste your money. I want you to walk away at the end of our sort of in whatever agreed term we work to. I want you to walk away, and I want you to have something to say about me for the rest of your life and the rest of your career. That's me leaving a legacy. I want to have an impact that has sort of created something that has triggered you off in a direction that has created something in your life that you will always remember our working relationship. And when you commit to that, you've got me nothing short of 110%. And I will be there through thick and thin. I will be there through our calls, through our day working together. And when you pick up the phone and you call me of an evening and say, Darren, I've got something I need to share with you, I'm there. If I'm not engaged on another call, if I am, I will call you back as soon as I'm free. That's what you get with me. So me on the sidelines, I'm watching your performance, and I'm there sort of tweaking as and when we need to make sure that we're getting to the next scene.
I mean, you're going to be that cheerleader on the side telling go, 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 but you're going to be that coach saying, you can, right? So, you know, sometimes we need people to hold us accountable. And, you know, I think that's what you're trying to do too with the leaders that you speak to. You're trying to get them in a position where they can become accountable to themselves, but also the people that they inspire, because much often leadership tends to go the other route where it's about me and how I shine and what I do and how I walk away. Forget that leadership is here to help others grow. Tell me your experiences. How would you describe leadership? And in particular, when you're working with clients, what picture of leadership do you paint for them that they can attain at the end of the day?
A great question. And I mean, you know, there are so many responses one could come up with based on their own perception of what leadership is. But when I'm working with, I'll probably ask the same sort of style of question when I'm working with a client. You know, what is your perception of leadership? And whatever they respond with, and we all know it's the ability to inspire and motivate, you know, a group of people towards achieving, you know, a common goal. Now, how we do that can vary dramatically. So whatever they come back with and however they define what leadership is, I say, okay, if I was to go and ask any one of your team members what their definition of leadership would be, would that match yours? Would they tell me exactly what you just told me? And most of the time I get probably not. Okay, so why is that? And again, we start to sort of strip it back to basics. So, you know, how transparent you are with your team. When you start to involve them, you're not asking them for the answers of doing the decision making on a day-to-day basis, but you're opening yourself up to their input and listening to them. And we know the power of listening to what is going on the ground. And I was working with an automotive group in the UAE about 18 months ago, and two big brands, Toyota and Lexus. And I had after sales managers for both brands. And Toyota, I had 18. And one of the dealerships I was working with, the after sales manager, again, this was being culturally driven, but he was very much, you know, task oriented and sort of going out and saying, like, this is what we're going to be doing, how we're going to be doing it, when we need to be doing it by, and very little involvement of the team. And I just said to him, what if you were able to go out with a questionnaire where you could ask for feedback from every member of your team, certainly within the mechanical side, and not necessarily put them under pressure, so you would ask it to be done anonymously. How would you feel about getting that response? And he said, well, I don't think I'd be able to do that because that would sort of devalue my position. I said, would it? What if that was going to enable you to have a stronger position because people feel that they are now being invited for their input, whereas before that was never a consideration? And in all fairness to him, he took the courage, he created this questionnaire, he ran it by me, and we sort of talked through a couple of tweaks, and he put it out there. And within a week, he had pretty much, I would say, about 90% response. And it wasn't all negative, it was all very, very positive because they felt valued. They really felt as though he valued their opinion on how they could impact the business. And, you know, he said, Darren, I'd never imagined doing that in a million years because I always had a perception of it being negative, a weakness, you know, me putting myself out there, asking for feedback from my team when they should be respecting everything I do. But now I've seen it from a very different style, very, very different angle, and I've got so much more of a commitment from them. I feel it when I walk around the workshop now. So it just shows, that level of openness, transparency, and willingness to be vulnerable is so powerful, Mohammed.
Do you think that's shifting? A lot of the things I talk about on this podcast are, I'd love to see the needle start, or the pendulum start swinging in the other direction when it comes to masculinity and male dominant alpha male leaders who believe that it's rank and roll and it's authoritarian style. So, they do it either out of fear or because that's the only thing they've known, it's a comfort zone. And, sometimes they do it intentionally because they believe that's the best way to lead others. So my question to you is, how do you convince that person who's stuck in their comfort zone, surrounded by their blind spots, that the only way to lead is to be domineering and to be authoritarian? How do you get them to step out of their comfort zone and show them that if you don't let people weigh in, they won't buy in? How do you have difficult conversations with them?
I take it to a scientific element, So I talk to them to the sense of a psychometric communication style methodology, and so we have people, we have tasks. So from what I hear about your leadership style, you're very task oriented. So everything's about delegating, getting everything done, and drive. How do we reflect on the people? And again, an example I can share with you. One of the managers I've worked with, he was very much like that, very much a taskmaster, and just go do it. I'm not too bothered about how you do it, just get it done. And again, in the automotive sector, he was sort of tasking a lot of his service advisors, who are tasked with, when a customer brings their car in for servicing, they deal with the booking in and making sure that they get all of the details of what the customer's complaining about, whether it be additional work over and above the service. And they sort of manage that customer experience all the way through the journey of that vehicle going through the workshop. When the technician has actually done the service and the diagnosis of any additional work, they then put that back to the service advisor. The service advisor then contacts the customer to try to sell the work. And it's all about numbers. And, we all know business is all about numbers. So it's all about driving certain items, make sure you get the brakes done, make sure you get the tires done, flush the radiator, etc., etc., etc. And they have targets to hit. And if these guys were not delivering the numbers, they would be, over a period of time, if they were consistently not delivering their numbers, a case of, okay, you're not delivering the numbers this month, you're not delivering the numbers this month, you're not delivering the numbers this month. Over a period of a quarter of not performing, they would be put on what they call a personal improvement plan. And that might be for another 3 to 6 months. And I said, okay, so what happens after that 3 to 6 months PIP process? Well, if they're still not performing, we get rid of them. I said, so how is that working for you? How much is that costing the business? Every single year, how much is that costing? When you get rid of somebody, then you've got to recruit somebody else in. You've got all of their onboarding expenses for visas, etc. You let the other one go, the flights back home, etc. And how is that working for you? And he said, well, it's not really. I said, so what if there was another way? Just imagine for 1 second, and sort of bear with me on this. Humor me. What if you could see another way that would see, after this person not performing, you don't even get to the point of putting them on a PIP. You get to the point of understanding where they're not performing, and you help them to move from task focused to more caring, more nurturing, people focused leadership, where you're then showing some humanity, some empathy towards that person. You're trying to transition them for that transformational growth. You're showing that you are really caring and you want them to win. You don't want them to fail at their job. So you're being a conduit for their success. And he said, well, if you can show that to me, then I'm all ears, and I'm all eyes, and I'm ready to sort of help. Okay, so we went through a process, and I just demonstrated a model called DISC, and I don't know if you're familiar with DISC.
Yes.
Yeah. For the benefit of your listeners, DISC is a beautiful model, and I've used it for about the last 8-9 years. And it really does identify 4 preferential styles of communication and preferential styles of behavior. And it's basically whether we are sort of more task focused or more people focused, more fast paced, outgoing, more extroverted, or more slower paced preference, more introverted, more cautious and reflective. And that gives us 4 quadrants basically. So I got him to move from a very high task focused, fast paced, outgoing, extroverted, just tell, to be more people focused. And the transformation that he saw within his department was amazing. After 2 months of working with him, I walked into the dealership and I said to him, it's just amazing the difference, because people, I felt like I was in a TV commercial. You know, when people walk up and they sort of have that long lingering smile, they look at you and they sort of, the smile just sort of burns its way through you, but it's that long lasting, you know, engaging, sincere smile. That's what I was seeing all around the dealership. I thought, wow, this is amazing. Have I done the work? No. Can I take credit for it? No. I've just shone the light with this guy, and I've given
that catalyst.
And I've given him the torch or the flashlight to hold. You know, and I mean, he was a real model of excellence in terms of promoting DISC and just showing that actually one can adapt their leadership style. He was actually taking the service advisors into the workshop every afternoon, and he was doing team building activities with them, with learning objectives that would come out as a result of it as well, you know. And it was just amazing, and they felt valued. And when he started to get to understand some of the motivators for why they weren't performing, some of these guys were under so much pressure, and they felt that if I fail, you know, I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to be, you know, shaming my family, because my job here is to send money back home to the family. And when he started to understand, you know, their reasons for not performing and how that was causing a fear factor, you know, he sort of scraped beneath the surface, and he showed that he was a human being interacting with another human being, and together we can get the job done and create more success.
And you know, my question to you was, are you seeing the needle, you know, moving? Are you seeing the pendulum swinging in the other direction? And I'd like to think yes, because I know that a lot of the traditional leadership, dominating, alpha male, get things done, if they have the right tools and if they start with self-awareness and understand that we really are there to help, like, the work is eventually going to get done, but you have a bunch of disgruntled, silently upset, and fear-mongering approach to getting things done? Or do you have the opportunity to engage them, let them weigh in so that you can get their buy-in, lean in, be curious about what's going on in their life, you know, ask if you notice that they're not having a good day, let them know that you care. And this is language that I don't think was part of our leadership culture 5 or 10 years ago. And I still see that it's not part of some leadership cultures today. But I think it has to change. And I think COVID is kind of shaking everyone to wake up that we can't risk not being humble in our humanity and our approach to working with each other, right?
Absolutely, Mohammed. And I think it is starting to see that swing now on that scale. And I think if anything has created that, it has been COVID-19. It's definitely created that.
I hope it lasts.
Well, I hope so as well, but for all of the right reasons. You know, I really hope it does. And, you know, if you think about life-changing events, and this has certainly been a life-changing event for all of us in one way, shape or form, you know, that creates behavioral change as well. And the fact that obviously a lot of leaders were distanced from their teams and having to communicate on a virtual platform, and hardly anyone was really prepared and set up to actually communicate on a virtual platform. And even now, a lot of people are showing up and they're not putting themselves on camera. And, you know, when you are only communicating with somebody through the power of voice, if they are not aware of how to use vocal tonality and, you know, enunciation to create, you know, the delivery of that message, you're not going to understand who that person really is on the other side. Or they might be putting on a brave voice, you know, when in reality they're feeling anxious, fearful, uncertain, all of those other words that might describe, you know, something that they are not displaying. And it takes real skill from a leader to be able to tap in and hear that sort of quiver in the voice. Okay, so Mohammed, are you okay? You know, when I asked you a certain question, your response was a bit delayed coming back, and I felt a bit of a quirk in your a crack in your voice. You know, are you okay? You know, it's just you and I now. You know, is everything okay? Is there anything I can do? You know, and that level of empathy and that self-awareness, and I guess the whole EQ has to be continuing to grow from you know, day to day with leaders now. And I think the pressure on them is more than ever, because most of them are okay, maybe doing it back face to face, but so many more are still working in remote locations.
Well, and it opens up opportunity when you think about that. You're not always, and I heard earlier what you said about going in with the person, and now maybe you're not able to physically go in with the person, but having the opportunity to do things virtually by using the tools in a way that helps you to get to where you need to. So, I mean, a tool is there, whether you're using DISC personality assessment, whether you're using Zoom, the tool is there to be at our, it's there to help us open the door. It's there to help us start the conversation. And so, a lot of the time people think that the tool is going to solve the problem for them. I'm going to read a book, I'm going to find the answer. I'm going to take a survey, it's going to tell me what I'm doing wrong, and it's going to fix things for me, right? And we need to know that a tool, a hammer, is used to hit a nail on the head. To screw in a screw into whatever, right? Piece of wood. So you need to use the right tool, and you need to use the right medium to communicate. So this kind of makes me wonder that bit by bit, when we're thrown into a crisis, we don't have a lot of options. Then we have to either react or respond. But the better we get at being proactive and learning to respond with responsibility, the better we're going to start doing. And what you're doing, you're arming them with self-awareness. You're arming them with knowledge. You're arming them with saying, you know what? Can you afford to continue leading in the way that you do at the expense of the people that you lead? Not seeing you as a problem solver, not seeing you as a person they can trust, not seeing you as a person with whom they can feel comfortable to make a mistake. And that is starting to be part of the conversation these days. And I welcome that, because I was managed by people in the past who it felt like it was, I was the nail and they were the hammer, right? And I think we need to move away from that and really start to say, we are in this together and we'll get through it together. And to your point, before you go on the PIP, the performance improvement plan, how can we have the person improvement plan, right?
Yeah.
How can we help that person become a better person? And this takes me to my question to you, because you've got so much knowledge based on your expertise and your cultural awareness. You're working with people in the Middle East, but I'm sure you've worked with people across the world. So you bring that level of intercultural awareness to it. But I'm going to ask you, if you could give my listeners one, and I want to be careful not to say one piece of advice, because it's not the right word, but from your experiences, what is one awakening moment or enlightening experience that you've had that you could share with others to help them become a better version of themselves, a better human being, a better leader? And just so you know, I use this for my unfiltered thought of the week. So I share your enlightenment or your expertise with my listeners so that they know how they can become better.
I thank you for that opportunity, Mohammed. And I think it's, asking yourself that very question, what can I do that will create a way for me to be more effective and create bigger ripples in the world? And the answer to that is really open-ended. And if you think about, if you took a handful of gravel and you threw it up in the air over a pond or a lake, and all of the pieces of gravel just landed in the water, how many of those ripples would you see? And that's the ability that we have, as a metaphor, that's the ability that we have to impact so many different people in so many different ways. I mean, today I was in Dubai and I went for a blood test, and the lady that was taking the blood, she can see she's on the machine, she's going round and round and round and round. And, I thought, how can I make a difference to this woman's, day to day? She's seen so many patients, and you're in there for not even 5 minutes, she's taking blood and off you go. So she's put the needle in, and I said, I'm from the UK, and she was from the Philippines. So she put the needle in, and she's talking to me, but she's not really paying that much attention to me because I'm just one of a number that she's got to get through, throughout the day. So I said, I'm from the UK. She said, right, okay. I said, in the UK, when we have blood and they've taken the blood, we get a lollipop for being a good boy. And she said, no, sir, no, not here. She said, I think that's only for kids. And my wife was with me. She said, he is a kid. So she had a laugh, but it was just something momentarily that it broke the monotony of doing. I mean, don't take that the wrong way. When I say monotony, she's taking blood, so many sort of, I don't know, volumes of blood per day, but she's taking that over and over and over again over a course of 8 or 9 hours. So it was just something to break the momentum of that. And whether she'll remember me, I doubt it very much. It gave her the change of focus.
Yeah.
And we can do that. We have the ability, Mohammed, to do that on every interaction that we come into, the opportunity to have with other people. We can do something differently. We can say something differently. We can show how that person has stood out to us, whether it be love your hairstyle, love your glasses, love your shoes. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I mean, there was another lady there today going around disinfecting all of the chairs, and when people were getting up and moving, she was going around, and I said, thanks very much. You're doing a great job, and again, it costs nothing.
The power of language.
Yeah, and it shows that you recognise what her role.
Well, it's these people that during the height of the pandemic in April and May and June, we were calling them our essential workers. But when things kind of eased off a bit, we lost. We weren't looking at them with the same sort of change that they were making to our community and to our health. And yes, they were like the first responders. They were essential. And I think, I remember somebody once telling me the story of President Kennedy when they were trying to get a man on the moon. And then he turned around to the janitor at NASA and he said, what is your goal? And he said, I want to put a man on the moon. And so each one of us, regardless of our role or our position or how much money we make or the corner office we have or don't have, we can help to be part of the solution. We can help to be part of the vision. It's up to the leaders to help them become part of that solution by opening the door, by allowing them to be part of the conversation. And when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and I know that this, we could spend another hour on this, and we will in the future. It's part of the dominant culture, or part of the dominant conversationalists to sit back and broaden up the conversation so that others feel that they can ease their way into it, and we could gain those perspectives that we wouldn't otherwise known. So, whether we're saying thank you, whether we're offering a lollipop, and she'll remember, she'll go home and tell the story to her kids, and she'll smile because she'll either think you're weird, that British guy that wanted a lollipop, so she'll smile and she'll remember you. Making that difference and being intentional about it. And at the end of the day, that comes back down to what we truly are. We are human beings and not human doers. So I want to appreciate you for sharing your expert enlightenment, expert advice. So I got to learn something here. So your learning moments and your experience and your passion, and that shows in the energy that you shared with us today. Thank you for being my unfiltered guest this afternoon.
Thank you, Mohammed. It's been a real pleasure.
I look forward to future opportunity to speak with you again, dear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I wish you all the very best and keep doing the great work you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Unfiltered, the show about authentic leadership and personal growth. Like what you heard? Click subscribe, share it, and tell a friend about it. And don't forget to leave a rating.